Hey guys, tonight we're going to take a deep dive into something colder than your ex's heart, surviving a day in a Victorian asylum. And no, I'm not talking about your neighborhood coffee shop. I'm talking about the real deal, where the beds were about as comfortable as a brick wall and the treatments were, well, let's just say they didn't believe in gentle care. Before you settle in, do me a favor and hit that like button, but only if you actually enjoy this content. No pressure. Subscribe, and maybe drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from. I'm always curious, because let's face it, it's always 2 a.m. somewhere, right? Now dim those lights, turn on a fan for a bit of background hum, get cozy, and maybe pull the blanket over your feet, because who knows what creatures are lurking in Victorian asylums. Ready? Let's start. Have you ever wondered what it felt like to live in a time when the cure for just about anything was leeches or bloodletting? What if the only way to relax was being strapped to a bed with nothing but a wooden spoon to keep you company? Ever try to escape from a place where the only form of entertainment was being forced to stare at cracked walls for hours on end? And now, congratulations, you've just woken up in a Victorian asylum. It's 1850. And no, you're not getting a cup of tea and a cozy pillow. You're getting, well, we'll get to that. Good luck. You've just stumbled out of bed, which to your surprise is a straw mattress on a wooden frame. It smells like damp, regret, and something you can't quite identify. You're not exactly sure how you ended up here. Was it the fact that you once spoke too loudly about the weather? Or was it your habit of laughing at things that didn't make sense? Either way, you found yourself in a world of cracked walls, dim lighting, and a stench that could make a skunk faint. Welcome to the Victorian Asylum, where the only thing more dangerous than the treatments is the smell. You try to sit up, but your arms feel heavy, like they're made of lead. Not because of the weight of your limbs, no, more likely because the only thing you've been fed for the last week is a diet consisting primarily of, well, you don't know what it is, but it's soft gray and suspiciously similar to wet cardboard. You turn your head, hoping for some sort of relief, but instead, you're greeted by the equally unhelpful sight of a fellow patient sitting by the window, staring out into the courtyard. She's muttering to herself, repeating the phrase, "The sky is blue, but the grass is green," over and over again. Maybe she's onto something. At least she's keeping herself entertained. You, however, are stuck here, trying to remember just what you did to deserve this. The room, for all its charm, which, let's face it, is absolutely none, is dimly lit by a flickering oil lamp in the corner. The walls are peeling in places, as if the asylum itself is in the process of falling apart, just like the sanity of its occupants. The stone floor feels cold beneath your bare feet, and every step you take echoes in the silence, as if the building is reminding you that you're not allowed to leave. The smell, that unmistakable stench, is everywhere. Mildew, sweat, and something else. Something you don't want to think about too much. As you drag yourself to your feet, you notice the other patients in the room. There's the man in the corner who insists he's Napoleon, wearing nothing but a tattered sheet and a crown made of sticks. His army seems to consist mostly of the occasional rat scurrying across the floor. The woman next to you, however, is a different story. She's curled up in the fetal position, clutching a pillow to her chest, as if it's the only thing in the world that could save her. Maybe it is. But before you can truly appreciate your new surroundings, A loud clang breaks through your thoughts, followed by the unmistakable sound of a bell. It's breakfast time, or what they call breakfast, which is basically a bowl of porridge that looks like it could double as a building material. You're not sure if it's the sound of the bell that sends shivers down your spine, or the fact that you now know you have no choice but to go eat whatever they've managed to call food in this place. You shuffle toward the door, trying to ignore the fact that your stomach is growling louder than the rats scurrying in the walls. The hallway outside is just as bleak as the room you left behind. The walls are lined with more patients, some of them sitting quietly, others pacing like they're walking through some unseen labyrinth. You pass the orderly on your way to the dining area, his face as expressionless as a brick wall. You try to catch his eye for some semblance of human connection, but he doesn't acknowledge you. At least you're not alone in that. The dining area is exactly what you expected. A room filled with long tables and benches, and an assortment of patients who look like they've all been personally victimized by the porridge. Everyone's scooping it into their bowls with the same enthusiasm as someone trying to get out of a speed bump at 60 miles per hour. The smell in the air? A delightful mix of desperation, raw oats, and what can only be described as unexplained mystery meat. It's the sort of place where you wonder if your stomach's just going to give up and walk out the door for a better life. But you swallow your pride and, unfortunately, the porridge, because, well, what else is there to do? Once you're finished, or at least, once you pretend you're finished, you're left with the reality that the rest of the day will pass in a haze of more bizarre treatments, stares from fellow inmates, and the inevitable round of leeches. Maybe today will be the day they offer you a chance to get out, or maybe you'll just be here, stuck in this dismal place until your bones are too weary to move. Either way, it's likely your options are about as limited as the imagination of your Victorian doctors. But don't worry, there's always something absurdly hilarious about being stuck in a place like this. You just have to find it. Today's treatment involves being locked in a small room with a doctor who believes your condition can be cured by applying leeches to your scalp. You know, for your hysteria. You protest, but unfortunately, the Victorian idea of medicine isn't exactly what we call scientific. No, instead of soothing words and warm blankets, you're getting a strange, odoriferous concoction of herbs and a good deal of judgment for not improving. But don't worry, you'll get used to it, or not. The doctor, who, let's be honest, looks like he hasn't smiled since the Queen's coronation, is standing in front of you with a smug expression, clutching a jar of leeches. You're not sure if it's the smell or the complete absurdity of the situation that's making you question reality, but either way, you know you've hit rock bottom. You glance around the room, looking for an exit that doesn't involve a confrontation with a jar full of tiny, wriggling creatures. You find none. Instead, you're met with the sight of a cabinet labeled medicinal herbs, which upon closer inspection also seems to contain several vials of unknown substances that may or may not be for your own good. Your mind drifts back to the moment you were locked in here, when you were told you were too emotional for your own good. The doctor had diagnosed you with hysteria, a mysterious ailment for women that basically meant whatever's wrong with you, it's all in your head. Well, that's comforting. The doctor's voice pulls you from your thoughts. Now we'll begin with a gentle application of these fine leeches, he says, as if it's the most logical thing in the world. You stare blankly at the jar, wondering if someone's playing a prank on you. Maybe the leeches are just really bad actors, and they'll miraculously jump off your head at the last second. Nope, this is not a prank. The jar is opened with a dramatic flourish, and before you can say, "Are you sure about this?" the doctor is placing the slimy creatures on your scalp like he's giving a weird hair treatment at a spa. It's not relaxing, it's not therapeutic, it's gross. The little leeches are squirming, wriggling into your hair, finding their way to your scalp like they're looking for the best restaurant in town. The doctor looks at you expectantly, as if this is a pleasant spa experience. You can't help but wonder, if these creatures were so good at solving problems, why don't we see them in more modern medicine? Maybe they'll start curing colds next. Just slap a few on your nose, and boom, you're better. But no, in Victorian times, this was considered state-of-the-art. Meanwhile, the doctor, oblivious to your mounting horror, is waxing poetic about the benefits of releasing the bad humors from your body. You tune him out, but the sound of his voice is almost more unbearable than the squelching of the leeches on your scalp. You try to keep your cool, but it's hard to maintain composure when your brain is whispering things like, "This is what they do to people who don't fit into society." Honestly, you're starting to think the real treatment for hysteria was just locking people up and watching them lose their minds. The leeches are still working on your scalp, and you're starting to feel a little itchy. Maybe that's just your sanity slowly slipping away. At this point, you're wondering if the real treatment is the doctor's ability to make you so uncomfortable that you forget what it was like to be free. What's next? A nice dose of gentle shock therapy? A cold plunge into a bathtub? It's hard to tell, because in the Victorian era, gentle meant something completely different. As the leeches finish their work, the doctor pats your shoulder and gives you a look that's more condescending than reassuring. "There you go. You'll feel much better now," he says, as if he's just given you a spa day instead of a full-on parasite treatment. You nod, not because you agree with him, but because it seems like the polite thing to do. But let's be real, you're not feeling better. You're feeling like you need a good, long nap, preferably somewhere far, far away from leeches and doctors who think that smearing your head with bugs is the key to solving your mental health problems. And as you leave the room, you can't help but wonder, if this is what medical progress looked like in the 1800s, what in the world did they think the future would look like? Maybe next, they'll prescribe whiskey for broken bones and tell you to walk it off. You'll survive today somehow. But the real question is, how many more days of treatment like this can you endure before you start questioning whether you're actually the one who needs to be treated? Ah yes, the straitjacket, a Victorian classic. It's like a hug, but one that makes you question all your life choices up to this point. You've heard of them, probably seen them in cartoons, but today you're the one wearing it. It's snug, tight, and somehow comforting in a "please don't make me move" kind of way. After all, they only strap you in to keep you from doing something crazy, like trying to escape, or speaking your mind, or maybe both. The straitjacket is made of coarse canvas, its fabric rough against your skin, almost as if it's made from the world's worst duvet cover, one that was never designed for comfort, just for containment. Your arms are bound across your chest, elbows pressed uncomfortably close together, and the only thing that's holding you together more tightly than this garment is the anxiety of realizing that you might actually be stuck like this for hours. It's the Victorian version of a wearable hug, Except this one doesn't love you. It's just trying to make sure you don't do anything too wild, like, asking questions. You shuffle, feeling like a human mummy, but with less grace and more frustration. The straitjacket limits your ability to move, to gesture, to do anything that might suggest you still have some modicum of freedom in your life. You look around, and as you do, you spot other patients similarly restrained. Some of them are sitting motionless, eyes glazed over, as if they've accepted their fate. Others fidget restlessly, twitching in the tight embrace of the fabric. Everyone, it seems, is just trying to survive another minute in this suffocating contraption, and you're no exception. It's strange, though, because the longer you stay in the jacket, the more you begin to question your own reality. Maybe this is what normal feels like in this world. Maybe the madness isn't being locked in a room and tied down. Maybe it's the fact that you're starting to feel a little okay with it. You can't move. You can't scratch your nose. You can't even throw your arms up in dramatic protest when the doctor tells you the next round of treatments will involve a calming walk in the courtyard, which in reality is more of a shuffle. Speaking of the calming walk, you're about to experience the joy of being escorted through the asylum grounds like a well-behaved pet on a leash. You try to stand, but your feet feel as though they've forgotten how to move properly. You've been trapped in this tight-fitting nightmare for so long that your body has almost become accustomed to it. You manage to take a step forward, then another, but every movement feels like a slow-motion dance, each step laced with the frustration of knowing you can't do anything to speed up the process. You pace by the other patients in their own straitjackets, and you can't help but notice that some of them seem to be in a trance, as if the jacket is both holding them down, physically and mentally. A few patients stand motionless, eyes wide, perhaps lost to whatever bizarre treatment they've endured over the years. The quiet shuffle of feet echoes in the hallway, but there's a distinct lack of conversation. There's something oddly peaceful in this oppressive silence. Maybe it's the jacket's hold on your body that makes you feel strangely calm, or maybe it's the sheer absurdity of the situation, because let's be real, how in the world did we get here? As you walk down the hall, you notice that the whole asylum seems to be a sort of quiet, controlled chaos. The walls are cracked, peeling paint hanging like the ghosts of forgotten rooms, and the air smells faintly of mildew and despair. The very air seems heavy with the oppressive weight of the institution, as if it knows you're trapped in here, wondering how long it'll take for your mind to break under the constant strain of being caged like an animal. You're guided outside into a small courtyard, a dreary patch of dirt and overgrown grass. There's no sunlight, just a grayish hue that seems to hang in the air like a permanent fog. The other patients are scattered around the yard, either sitting in small groups or walking slowly, as if the very act of movement is too much for them. You're not sure if they're being calm or if they're simply defeated. One patient, however, stands in the corner, his arms flailing dramatically in his straitjacket as he mumbles something about freedom. You can't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for him. After all, he's only doing what any sane person would do, desperately fighting against the unyielding restraints of a system that's designed to break you. But it's all okay, right? It's just a straitjacket. Just another form of treatment. Sure, it might feel like your life is being boiled down to nothing but a series of tight, suffocating straps. But hey, it's Victorian medicine. If you make it out of here, At least you can say you survived something a lot less pleasant than a spa day. And isn't that worth something? It's lunchtime, and while most people are enjoying a nice sandwich or a hot soup, you're here, staring at what can only be described as wet cardboard. The only question that remains, is it food, or just something your brain is telling you is food to prevent you from inspiring into full-on madness? At least it's warm, kind of. You approach the table where your meal awaits, unsure of whether to laugh or cry. The consistency is unsettling, to say the least. It's thick, pasty, and a shade of beige that you didn't know existed outside of faded wallpaper. It sits there in your bowl like a sad, soupy mass that seems to be both daring you and begging you to eat it. The smell is faint, but somehow worse than the look. It's the kind of aroma that doesn't quite reach your nose, but manages to settle somewhere deep in your stomach, making you wonder if your body is trying to self-destruct from the inside out to avoid what's about to happen. The spoon looks like it was designed to serve you a hefty helping of regret. It's small, with rough edges that feel like they were carved by someone who thought spoons were optional. You dip it into the porridge, the texture unyielding, as if the spoon is pushing through an unpleasantly thick sea of something not quite food. As the spoon hits the bottom, you realize the full extent of your situation. This is not just a meal, it's an endurance test. Who needs the Olympics when you have Victorian dining? You lift the spoon, and somehow it's heavier than you remember, like it's trying to pull you back into the depths of this culinary horror show. You glance around the room, half hoping to see someone else dramatically recoil at their own serving, but alas, everyone else seems oddly at peace with their fate. Is this some sort of collective Stockholm syndrome? Is there a silent agreement here to pretend this is fine? You catch the eye of one patient sitting across from you, and he gives you a nod, a silent, tragic acknowledgement of your shared misery. His bowl, too, is filled with the same beige monstrosity, and you can almost hear his thoughts. If I don't eat this, I might die. But if I do eat this, I'll probably die too. You bring the spoon to your lips, the moment of truth approaching. The first taste is, well, it's not as much a taste as it is an experience. It's like eating something that once had a purpose, but has since forgotten what it was. You're chewing, but it's more of a slow-motion, hesitant process. There's no flavor to speak of, just a vague, neutral bitterness that coats your mouth like you've just eaten a handful of dust mixed with despair. It's not that you're not hungry, it's that you're not sure if this counts as food anymore. You swallow, and for a brief moment you question your existence. Is this it? Is this what it means to be alive in Victorian times? To be trapped in a world where the only meal you can rely on is a bowl of warm slop that nobody dares to call food? The porridge sits heavily in your stomach, not because it's satisfying, but because it's somehow too much, too thick, too bland, too demanding of your attention. It's like an emotional weight that drags you down, leaving you unsure if you should be sad, angry, or just grateful that you're still alive to suffer through another spoonful. Around you, the other patients are eating, or pretending to. Some are stirring their bowls absent-mindedly, while others are shoveling in spoonful after spoonful with the determination of someone who has been told this is the last meal they'll ever get. There's no joy in this process, no camaraderie, just the quiet, resigned ritual of getting through the day. You wonder if there's some sort of reward for finishing it, but deep down, you know the only reward here is surviving the moment. That and maybe getting a break from having to pretend that you enjoy eating wet cardboard every single day. The clock ticks on in the corner, an ever-present reminder that time isn't so much moving forward as it is just dragging you along at its own pace. You glance at the small piece of bread on the side of your plate, wondering if it's any better than the porridge. You take a tentative bite, hoping for a crumb of hope, but the bread is just as disappointing, dry, hard, and probably a little stale. It's the kind of bread that makes you wonder if fresh was a concept invented sometime after the 19th century. As you force yourself to finish the meal, you can't help but wonder, was there a time before this? A time when food didn't feel like a cruel joke played on your senses? When lunch didn't involve questioning the very nature of what you were consuming? But alas, this is your reality now. The Victorian Asylum, where porridge is the highlight of the day, and eating feels more like survival than enjoyment. And so, you finish your bowl, spooning the last remnants into your mouth, wondering if maybe, just maybe, tomorrow will bring something different. Probably not, but one can dream. It's time to listen to the comforting sounds of your new home. Sure, there's a bit of silence, but not the relaxing, peaceful kind. No, here, the silence is filled with the occasional scream, the rattle of chains, and the soft shuffle of slippers on the floor as people are wheeled past in their own little worlds. It's like a ghost story, but you're the ghost, and this is your personal haunting. The silence in the Victorian Asylum is deafening in its own way. It's not the quiet of a library or a peaceful meadow. No, this silence feels almost deliberate, like the walls are holding their breath, waiting for the next patient to lose their mind or the next treatment to begin. It's as though the very air is heavy with anticipation, waiting, watching, listening for something to break. And when it does break, it's the kind of sound that makes your skin crawl. You hear it first, a faint cry, like someone calling out in their sleep, or maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's the desperate shout of a soul who's lost their grip on reality. Either way, it's unsettling. The cry drifts through the hallway, bouncing off the stone walls, echoing in the stillness, like a trapped bird trying to find its way out of a cage. You sit up a little straighter in your bed, unsure whether to be concerned or to pretend you didn't hear it. It's not like you haven't heard worse already. Every night, someone screams in this place. Sometimes it's a whisper, sometimes it's a full-on wail of terror, but either way, you learn to ignore it. Or at least, you try. But the real fun starts when you hear the rattle of chains. It's not a big sound, not by itself, just the soft clink of metal against metal. But when you're in a room like this, surrounded by people who seem to be held together more by their restraints than by any kind of coherent thought, the sound becomes almost sinister. The chains are attached to the patients who've been deemed too dangerous, and they're kept in the quiet room. You don't get to visit that room, thankfully, but you know it's there, just beyond the wall, and every now and then, you'll hear the rattling, the slow, deliberate dragging of metal across the floor as one of these patients is wheeled past, their movements restricted, their souls trapped in some kind of eerie limbo. You can't help but wonder what they were like before they arrived here. What were they thinking? What did they do to end up like this? Then there's the shuffle of slippers. At first, you think it's just the normal sound of patients walking around. But the more you listen, the more you realize it's not normal at all. The shuffle is slow, deliberate, like each patient is moving through a fog. Some of them are too weak to walk properly, so they shuffle along the floor, their feet dragging behind them like they're being pulled by some invisible force. You try to ignore the sound, but it's impossible. It's the kind of sound that gets into your head that haunts your dreams. The worst part? Sometimes the shuffle isn't just a shuffle. Sometimes it's accompanied by soft, murmured words that don't make sense. You might hear someone in the hallway whispering, "I'm not crazy, I'm not crazy," over and over again, like a mantra, trying to convince themselves. Or maybe it's someone else, someone who's long forgotten how to speak normally, their words tumbling out in a garbled mess. And you wonder, are they talking to themselves? Or are they talking to the walls, the ghosts, the demons that only they can see? You can't say. The lines between reality and madness get a little blurry in this place. Then, of course, there's the soft thud of a door opening, followed by the unmistakable squeak of a metal wheel, one of the orderlies pushing a patient down the hall in a wheelchair. The patient, of course, doesn't seem to notice the world around them. Their eyes are glazed over, staring into the distance, as though they're not really seeing anything at all. The orderly's voice is quiet, almost soothing, but you can't help but think that there's something unsettling about how mechanical it all feels. As if they're not so much helping the patient as they are moving them from one spot to another, shuffling them around like cattle. And through it all, you're left wondering how many of these patients are actually mad. How many of them just ended up here because society didn't know what to do with them? How many of them would be fine if they were just allowed to speak their mind, to have a real conversation, to ask for help? But no, in this place, it's not about healing. It's about quieting the noise, about shutting people down before they get too loud, too angry, too human. In the end, the silence is the loudest sound in the asylum. It's the kind of silence that weighs on you, that fills the space with unspoken dread. Because in this place, silence means no one is saying anything. It means the walls are listening, and you're just one more lost soul waiting for your turn. The occasional scream, the rattle of chains, the shuffle of slippers, they're the soundtrack of this place. The sounds that remind you that madness isn't just a condition. Sometimes it's a way of life. Hydrotherapy? More like, let's dunk this poor soul in cold water and hope they miraculously feel better. Picture it. You're submerged in freezing water, but hey, it's for your health. Sure, you're shivering uncontrollably, but the doctors swear it's good for your mental health. If this is what recovery looks like, then maybe you'd prefer to stay a little unwell. You're standing there in what can only be described as an oversized medieval bathtub, except it's not really a tub. It's more of a shallow pool of misery. The cold water comes up to your waist, and as it licks at your skin, you immediately start to wonder, was there ever a time when this was considered comforting? The air is thick with the smell of chlorine, or maybe it's just the smell of despair, but whatever it is, it's doing absolutely nothing to make you feel at ease. The nurses, if you can even call them that, look on as if they've just asked you to perform a delicate ritual, not an act of survival. It's for your mental health, they say, nodding reassuringly. You try to smile, but it's hard when your body is shaking so violently. It feels like you're trying to start a fire by rubbing your teeth together. You try to hold on to some shred of dignity as the cold water clings to you like 1,000 tiny needles. The doctors, with their perfect little white coats and eager smiles, circle you like you're some kind of specimen they've just discovered. "Don't worry," one of them says, as if a cold-induced shivering is a cure-all. "The water stimulates your circulation." Yeah, and it's also turning your body into a human ice cube. But sure, let's go with that. They cheerfully advise you to relax. Relax. That's a good one. You're not sure whether you should laugh or cry, so you do neither. Instead, you try to focus on anything that isn't the fact that your body has essentially gone numb from the waist down. But hey, it's not just any water. It's therapeutic water, probably drawn from the world's least inviting source. In the Victorian era, this was their idea of a spa day. While you imagine your modern self sipping iced tea by a warm pool in the summer, you're standing in freezing water, praying that you'll survive the next 5 minutes without turning into a human popsicle. You look at the other patients, and some of them are giving you encouraging smiles, but it's hard to tell whether they're in pain too, or if their faces have just frozen from the cold. Maybe it's a little of both. And this, folks, is what they considered treatment. Forget mindfulness. Forget warm blankets and cozy tea. Instead, you get dunked in water so cold it's probably illegal by today's standards. It's almost impressive how much discomfort these doctors managed to pack into one treatment. You can't help but wonder if deep down they knew this was ridiculous too. But hey, they were just doing their job. After all, it wasn't about comfort. It was about discipline. If you survived the water, you were considered stronger. If you didn't, well, you were either too fragile or, probably mentally ill and beyond saving. Either way, you didn't get to leave the asylum with your dignity intact. The more you think about it, the more you realize that this was the Victorian version of self-care. If you were unwell, you didn't get a soft pillow and some herbal tea. No, you got an icy bath, and you'd better not complain about it. Because, of course, the theory behind it all is that a little shock to the system would cure your woes. Whether it was physical or mental, they had a remedy for everything. And that remedy was almost always painful. You can't help but wonder if it's all part of some twisted, unspoken game. The doctors who looked at you like a patient, and the patients who learned to survive the most absurd, uncomfortable treatments they could dream up. The cold water is no longer refreshing. It's no longer invigorating. It's just cold. And as you stand there, trying not to shiver yourself into a pile of frozen limbs, you can't help but think, how many others have endured this? How many have stood in this same pool at this same moment, wishing for anything else but more of the same? Your brain is starting to feel the effects of the cold, and as the minutes drag on, it's harder to focus on anything other than the bone-deep chill gnawing at your skin. At long last, the doctors declare you done, which really just means they've gotten bored of watching you suffer. They help you out of the water, more like drag you out, and as you stand there dripping and shivering, you wonder if your mind has just shut down for self-preservation. You're not sure whether the water has helped you or whether you've just been tortured in the name of therapy. Either way, you're left with the same question. If this is what recovery looks like, do you even want to be cured? As they wrap you in a scratchy towel and lead you back to your room, you silently vow to yourself that if you survive this place, you'll never look at a swimming pool the same way again. In fact, you'll probably avoid cold water for the rest of your life, or at least until modern medicine figures out what comfort actually means. Time for a little exercise, or what they call Exercise. You're escorted to a yard that's more like a cage than a playground. There, you shuffle around in circles just with a dozen other patients, all moving at the pace of molasses in winter. It's not exactly the fresh air you imagined, but hey, it's movement. Sort of. You're led through the asylum's back door, which creaks in protest as if the building itself is trying to hold you back. You step into the yard, and immediately, the first thing you notice is the overwhelming sense of enclosure. The walls surrounding the yard are tall and imposing, like a fortress built not to protect, but to trap. The air outside isn't much fresher than it was indoors, just a faint smell of dirt, damp wood, and the lingering scent of what could only be described as institutional despair. If this is the outdoors, it's nothing like the meadow you'd imagined during your long, feverish daydreams of escape. This is a prison, but with less dignity and more mud. The exercise itself is, well, it's not exactly what you would call exercise, unless your definition includes dragging your feet in the most energy-sapping way possible while trying not to trip over your own shoelaces. The others around you move with a similar lethargy, as though their bodies have forgotten what it feels like to move freely. You shuffle, and the others shuffle with you, the slow, synchronized rhythm of mental exhaustion. It's as if you're all locked in a strange, silent dance, with no music and no audience except the stone walls that keep watch like silent guards. You try to take a deep breath of the air, but it doesn't feel like the fresh air you'd hoped for. Instead, you're greeted by the smell of wet dirt, stale sweat, and something else you can't quite place. It's the smell of confinement, and it's hard to escape it, even with the full expanse of the yard before you. The fact that you're walking in circles, moving without purpose, only amplifies the feeling that you're stuck in a loop, one you can't break out of. The whole situation feels absurd. Here you are, being told to exercise in a yard that's less inviting park and more re-education camp, and you're not even allowed to break out of the monotonous pace. It's as if the institution is telling you that the best way to heal is by, well, not healing at all. As you walk, you notice the others. Some are muttering to themselves. Others are lost in their own little worlds. There's the man at the far end of the yard who's mumbling something about escaping, but can't seem to get more than a few feet from the wall before he shuffles back to his starting point. He's been at this for weeks, or so it seems. It's as if he's resigned himself to the endless loop of motion, the never-ending circle of nothing. Then there's the woman who's walking with her head down as if she's searching for something, maybe hope, maybe a way out. It's hard to tell, but one thing is clear. None of you are getting any actual exercise. This isn't physical activity. It's a form of containment disguised as health. After a few minutes of dragging your feet along with the others, you realize that it's not even the exercise that's making you feel drained. It's the sheer pointlessness of it all. You're not moving for the sake of your health. You're moving because it's the one thing they've given you to do, one more thing to make you feel like you're progressing, when in reality, it's just another distraction. You can't help but feel like the institution has given up on actually helping anyone. This exercise isn't about healing. It's about keeping you busy, keeping you from thinking too much. After all, a tired mind is a quiet mind, or so they hope. The whole thing is strangely hypnotic, though. The shuffle, the slow circle, the lack of any real direction. It starts to make your mind wander. You think about the things you used to enjoy, the activities that used to make you feel alive. Maybe you'd take a walk in the park or dance around your living room with your favorite song playing. Maybe you'd even jog to the corner store for a snack. But here, those things feel like memories from another life. You're stuck in a system that values compliance over individuality. The more you walk, the more you realize this is what your life has become. This is your new reality. Eventually, the bell rings, signaling the end of exercise. The group shuffles back toward the building, some moving faster than others, but none of them looking truly alive. You can't help but wonder if there's more to this place than the grueling routines and lackluster treatments. Is this really healing, or just another way to wear you down until you're too tired to care? You find your way back inside, your legs sore from the pointless walk, but it's not physical exhaustion that weighs on you. It's the crushing realization that this asylum's idea of healing doesn't involve much more than moving in circles until you forget how to walk straight. And so, the day goes on. You've survived another round of exercise, but in the back of your mind, you can't help but ask, is this really what it means to recover? Or is this just a way to keep you locked inside your own mind, one slow shuffle at a time? If your dreams are haunted by nightmares, you're in luck. The asylum has the perfect solution: electric shocks. Forget sleeping it off. Now you get to wake up with a new type of pain, a pain that zaps through your entire body, almost as if your body is being recharged. Hopefully, you're not awake when it happens. If you are, well, the asylum staff might find it helpful to remind you that it's for your own good. Imagine for a moment that you're lying in your bed, the same bed that's become a constant reminder of your confinement. You're drifting off to sleep, and just as your mind begins to slip into the eerie comfort of unconsciousness, you feel it, a sudden, sharp sensation that shoots through your limbs. It's not a dream, it's a reality. The electricity surges through you like an uninvited guest at a party, not asking for permission, not caring if you're ready for it or not. It feels as if your body is being jolted awake against its will, as though someone just flipped a switch, turning your very nerves into a live wire. But wait, you're supposed to be sleeping, right? This is supposed to be the moment where you finally get rest from your own racing thoughts, but instead, you're in for a new kind of shock therapy. The asylum's doctors insist this is the cure for your nightmares. It doesn't matter that your dreams are just a little too vivid or that your mind is a bit too active for their liking. They've got a solution for that. And that solution is a jolting, high-voltage burst of electricity coursing through your body, designed to reset your nervous system. The only problem? It's more likely to make you feel like you've been struck by lightning than offer you any kind of peace. If you're lucky, you're unconscious when it happens. The thought of your body convulsing under the shock is almost enough to make you wish you were still asleep. You've heard the stories, the patients who accidentally wake up during their treatment, eyes wide in terror as they feel their muscles twitching against their will. The staff, of course, insists this is for your own good. After all, if you're experiencing these bad dreams, something must be wrong, right? So the only logical solution is to jolt your body into submission, as if your nightmares can be banished through sheer physical force. It doesn't stop there. No, the doctors are convinced that this procedure is a miracle cure. They watch with quiet satisfaction as the electricity courses through your body, convinced that you'll wake up a new person, free of the haunting dreams that have been plaguing you. The idea that the mind and body might need gentler care, or that you're just dealing with a natural response to trauma never crosses their minds. Instead, they believe this treatment will erase your problems, like an eraser scrubbing away mistakes on a chalkboard. But there's no mistaking the irony. The shock therapy doesn't erase your nightmares. It just replaces them with the painful memory of the jolt itself. When you're finally allowed to regain your senses, your body feels heavy, sluggish, as though the very shock you endured has drained the energy from your bones. The after effects are subtle but powerful. A thrum in your muscles, a dull ache in your head, a sense of disorientation that leaves you wondering if you're still in the world of the living. You try to focus, to process what just happened, but all you can think about is the sensation of electricity buzzing through you, leaving behind an uncomfortable memory that lingers far longer than the shock itself. As you attempt to stand, your legs feel like they've forgotten how to function. It's not that they're weak from the shock. It's more like they've been reset, like they've had the switch flipped off and then back on. And as you stumble toward the door, wondering if you'll make it out without falling, you realize you're not exactly sure what healing means anymore. Is it really worth it to have your body feel like it's been through a storm just to avoid a nightmare? The asylum doctors would say yes, but in your heart, you know there's got to be a better way. The worst part? After all that, after feeling like your body's been through the ringer, the nightmares don't go away. They might even come back stronger, more intense. You might find yourself staring at the ceiling in the dead of night, wondering if the electricity was supposed to fix your mind, or if it was just another cruel reminder of how little control you have over your own body. After all, what's more terrifying than being trapped inside a mind that doesn't feel like yours? And in this place, it's hard to know which nightmare is worse, the one inside your head or the one you're living through right now. As the shock therapy becomes just another part of your daily routine, you can't help but wonder, what else will they try next? Maybe they'll start applying actual lightning bolts to your head next time, just to see what happens. At least that might be a little more exciting than the dull buzz of the current, right? But then again, this is Victorian medicine, and in this place, anything is possible, no matter how absurd, painful, or downright bizarre. As the day progresses, you're starting to realize that the best thing about being in the asylum isn't the treatment, or the food, or even the smell of mildew in every corner. It's the fact that no one wants to be around you. Isolation. The silent gift of never having to see a friendly face, or any face really. It's peaceful in the most desolate way possible. You've noticed it now, the solitude. It doesn't hit you all at once. It's gradual, like the slow, creeping fog that settles over the yard in the early morning hours. At first, the quietness feels eerie, like the calm before a storm. You find yourself walking down the hallways, noticing the faint sound of your own footsteps echoing, bouncing off the cold stone walls. The silence isn't oppressive. It's more like an old friend who's stopped talking. And you've stopped trying to start the conversation. After all, what's the point? No one is really listening. Or worse, maybe no one is capable of listening. As you walk through the asylum, you notice the other patients moving in their own little worlds, each locked in their own mental cage, each just as lost in the silence as you are. The only sound that breaks through this thick layer of quiet is the occasional shuffle of slippers or the clink of metal chains as someone is escorted to their next treatment. But even that doesn't seem to matter. You are here, in this forgotten space, where conversation is nothing more than a distant memory. No one speaks unless it's required, unless it's a command or a desperate plea for something, anything, that might break the monotony. And even then, it's all just words that fall into the silence, disappearing into the void without a trace. At first, you hated the silence. It felt unnatural, unnerving. But over time, it becomes something else. It becomes familiar. It becomes a companion of sorts. The emptiness fills the gaps in your mind, swallowing up your thoughts, your desires, your regrets. At least here in this sea of isolation, you don't have to feel like you're letting anyone down. You're alone, and that's exactly what the asylum seems to want. The staff doesn't need you to engage. They just need you to exist in the background, to fade into the scenery, unnoticed. It's easier this way. It's easier to become a ghost. There's no more pretending you're okay, no more small talk, no more forced smiles or awkward conversations about the weather. The other patients are all in their own world too, quietly shuffling through the hours, their faces empty of expression, their eyes dull with the weight of being forgotten. Even the staff, the ones who wheel you from place to place, seem like they're living in the same silence. Their voices don't hold much meaning. They don't ask how you're doing or if you need anything. They just move you, observe you, and then leave you to your thoughts. You've started to wonder if maybe this is the true purpose of the asylum, not to cure, but to erase. To remove you from the world and place you in a bubble of silence where nothing matters except the next empty hour. No one needs you to speak, to fight, to feel anything at all. And in a strange way, that peace, the kind that comes with giving up the need for connection, starts to feel like a relief. It's like floating on your back in a vast empty sea. You can't remember what shore looks like anymore, but it's okay. You've stopped trying to find it. The most jarring part of it all is how quickly you adapt. The longer you stay in this place, the easier it becomes to forget what the world was like outside. You don't think about the past because it feels so far away now. You don't think about the future because that's something that doesn't matter here. There's no more rushing to make plans, no more urgency to fill the silence with meaningful conversations or actions. It's just you, the walls, and this never-ending stillness. And sometimes that's exactly what you want. No questions, no answers, just the soft hum of quiet, punctuated by the occasional noise. Someone being moved, a door creaking open, the soft scrape of a broom across the floor. Of course, this isolation isn't a choice. You didn't come here for solitude. But now that you're here, it's hard to imagine wanting anything else. It's a strange comfort, this void, this bubble where you're left alone with your thoughts. It's peaceful in a desolate way. And for the first time in what feels like forever, you wonder if maybe the silence has finally given you the peace you've been searching for all along. It's not freedom, not in the traditional sense, but in this place, you've found a sort of quiet acceptance. The world outside is too loud, too demanding, too full of expectations. But here, in the silence, you are free. Free from the weight of needing to be anything other than what you are in this moment, nothing. And maybe that's the cruelest gift the asylum gives you, freedom from the world, a world that's no longer yours to inhabit. Hygiene, Victorian style, was a whole experience. By experience, I mean it involved roughly 3 people in the entire asylum who knew what soap was. Most of your fellow patients have forgotten what a bath feels like, and it shows. But don't worry, the cleaning process here doesn't involve much water, just a lot of shaking your head and pretending the smell doesn't exist. The asylum's idea of cleanliness is, well, let's say, it's highly subjective. Hygiene is not about the fresh, soothing scents of lavender-scented soap or the warm embrace of a long, comforting bath. No, it's more about pretending that the thick layer of grime caked into your skin will just magically disappear. The reality is, if you're lucky enough to get cleaned, you might get a quick splash of lukewarm water, accompanied by a few wet rags rubbed aggressively against your skin, nothing so luxurious as an actual soak. You'd think that a place housing hundreds of patients might have a few more bathtubs lying around. But nope. Here, it's all about efficiency. Who needs water when you have the illusion of cleanliness? You step into the so-called bathroom, which is a dark, cramped room with a single rickety tub in the corner, and you immediately notice something that might be worse than the lack of cleanliness: the smell. The air is thick with the scent of sweat, mildew, and stale body odor. The walls are stained with what you can only hope is soap scum, and the floor is slick with a mysterious layer of something sticky. There's no ventilation, just the faintest whiff of air that's more likely to carry germs than anything that might freshen the place up. The one window is small, covered in grime, letting in just enough light to show you how truly grim things are. As you stand there, wondering how exactly this is supposed to help, you notice the water taps, rusted, dripping, and barely functional. You look at the puddle of water at your feet, unsure whether it's leftover from the last patient or the water itself is a part of the grand Victorian cleansing ritual. Maybe it's a mystical water, passed down through the generations, water that's seen things, man. As the nurse brings out a basin and some rags, you can't help but wonder if the patients here might be cleaner if they were just allowed to roll in the dirt for a while, like a wild animal. It would probably feel more effective than whatever this cleaning is supposed to be. The nurse, who's looking at you with the same expression she uses for every patient, seems totally unaffected by the condition of the space. She simply dips the rag in the basin, wrings it out, and proceeds to scrub you down. The water's cold, of course. That's part of the charm of Victorian hygiene. Why would you need warm water when you could freeze yourself into submission? The rag feels like it's made of burlap, scraping across your skin, leaving you wondering if this is a punishment or a medical treatment. You want to protest, to tell her this isn't really cleaning you, but the look on her face suggests she's been doing this for years, and this is simply the way things are done. It's for your own good, she assures you, without a hint of irony, as she proceeds to rub the damp rag over your face like you're a piece of laundry she's trying to wash clean. You take a deep breath, but instead of fresh air, the smell in the room wraps around you like a damp blanket. It's hard to tell whether it's the smell of the water, the lack of ventilation, or the general aura of neglect that makes everything seem so wrong. You briefly wonder if anyone would notice if you just left, just walked out and never returned to this bleak, door-filled corner of the asylum. But where would you go? Out into the courtyard, where the air is only marginally fresher. Back to your bed, where the sheets smell just as bad as the water, and your pillow is as lumpy as a pile of dirt? The reality of being trapped here is all-consuming, and the lack of basic hygiene seems almost like a reflection of the deeper, more insidious neglect that exists throughout the institution. And yet, no one complains. There's a certain resignation in the air, a silent agreement that this is just how it is. The staff don't seem to care about providing any real comfort. They simply go through the motions, checking off boxes in their routines, making sure you're clean enough to pass inspection without actually doing anything meaningful. It's the same with everything here. Half-heated efforts to make you feel better, but none of it actually works. The water's cold, the towels smell faintly of mildew, and when you look in the mirror afterwards, you see a face that's been scrubbed clean of all dignity, not just dirt. And yet, somehow, this is all you can expect. The asylum's idea of hygiene is so far removed from anything resembling comfort or care that you start to wonder if the true purpose isn't to clean you, but to dehumanize you. This isn't about making people feel better. It's about stripping away anything that might remind you of what it means to be human. In a place where cleanliness is a luxury, they've forgotten what it means to care. And you're just another patient, another body in the system, being scrubbed down for the sake of looking somewhat presentable, though no one really cares whether you're clean or not. They only care that you're silent, that you're compliant, that you're invisible. Because in this place, that's what hygiene is all about. As night falls, you're left in the hands of the infamous night watchman. He's the guy you've heard whispers about, the one who, for some reason, prefers to stay in the shadows. You never really know where he's going or what he's up to, but you can bet one thing. If you hear his boots creaking through the hallway, you're not safe from whatever bizarre tasks he's got for you next. The transition from day to night in the asylum is subtle, almost imperceptible. One moment, you're drifting through the monotony of your daily routine, sitting in the common room, shuffling through the halls, enduring treatments that only make you feel worse. And then, with little warning, everything shifts. The air changes, growing colder, heavier. The lights flicker, the shadows stretch longer, and you're reminded once again that you're not in charge of your time. The night belongs to the watchman now, and with him comes a sense of dread, one that seeps under your skin and settles deep in your bones. You don't know much about him, except that no one speaks his name directly. The staff refer to him in hushed tones, if they refer to him at all. There's an unspoken agreement among the patients. You don't talk about the night watchman. You don't look him in the eye. You don't make noise when he's near. All you do is wait and listen, and then it happens. The first sound you hear is the creak of leather boots dragging across the floor, slow, deliberate. The sound isn't loud, but in the silence of the asylum, it's enough to make your heart skip a beat. The watchman is on his rounds, and he's coming closer. You've learned that the best thing you can do when you hear him is to pretend you don't exist. Close your eyes, bury yourself deeper under the thin, scratchy blanket, and hope he doesn't notice you, because if he does, it's never good. His footsteps echo in the hallway, resonating off the cold stone walls. The watchman's pace is methodical, almost ritualistic. He's not in a hurry. There's no urgency in his movements. He's here to make sure you stay where you are, to make sure you understand who's in control. You can't help but imagine him lurking in the corners of the asylum, his eyes hidden under the brim of his dark hat, waiting to pounce on any poor soul unlucky enough to be caught in his path. Sometimes you hear the faint clink of keys. He carries a ring of them with him, and the sound is just enough to send a shiver down your spine. Each key represents a door, a room, a part of the asylum that you're not supposed to know about. Each key could unlock a secret you don't want to discover, but you'll never know for sure. The watchman keeps his distance, always just out of reach, and any curiosity you might have fades into the shadows along with him. It's not just the sound of his boots that makes you uneasy, it's the feeling, the palpable sense that he knows something you don't, that he's seen things in the asylum that no one should ever see. You'll never know for sure, but there are rumors, whispers in the dark, that the night watchman isn't just a man. Some say he's been here so long that he's become part of the asylum, a shadow of its madness. Others claim he was a patient once, but something about him changed. He became the thing that haunted the very walls he once lived behind. When you hear him coming down the hall, you hold your breath, hoping he won't stop outside your door. But you know that's a false hope. The watchman always stops. He always lingers. And when he does, you can feel his presence like a cold draft, seeping through the cracks in the walls. Sometimes he knocks, not on the door but on the walls, as though checking for something, like a predator testing the boundaries of its cage. It's a soft tap, almost imperceptible, but when you hear it, you know he's watching, waiting, judging. You try not to imagine what he's doing when he's out there in the dark, but your mind can't help it. You picture him standing in the shadows, just beyond the reach of the dim hallway light, his eyes flicking between the patients, looking for signs of resistance, of disobedience. You can almost hear the click of his tongue, the quiet judgment. You start to wonder if you're on his list, if tonight will be the night you draw his attention. What happens then? What's the price for his notice? It's a terrifying thought, but it's one you don't dare share. You don't talk about the night watchman, but you all know he's there. You know that, for as long as he's around, your nights will be filled with whispers, creaks, and the unsettling feeling of being watched. The asylum isn't just a place of physical confinement. It's a place where something darker lurks, and the night watchman is the keeper of that darkness. So you lie in bed, eyes wide open, listening to the slow, rhythmic pace of his boots fading into the distance, wondering what horrors tomorrow might bring. But one thing is certain. As long as the night watchman is in charge, the silence of the asylum is never truly peaceful. You're starting to wonder, how do people actually leave the asylum? Is there a secret door? A magic potion? It turns out the only thing that gets you out is recovery. If you follow the rules, which you might or might not understand, your chances improve. Maybe one day they'll let you out, if you're lucky. Or maybe you'll be left to rot in this mental health utopia forever. Either way, it's fine. The concept of recovery here is as vague as the institution's definition of care. The doctors rarely explain what exactly counts as improvement, and the staff's idea of progress seems to revolve around you being as docile as possible. Do they want you to talk? Be quiet. Do they want you to participate in group activities? Sit still and stare at the floor. The concept of mental healing here is just as murky as the water in the wash basin. You don't know if it's helping, but you're encouraged to pretend it is. They say that recovery is about following the rules, but those rules, they change every day. One day, you're praised for sitting quietly. The next day, you're scolded for not speaking. One moment, you're told that eating is key to improvement. The next, you're chastised for eating too much. It's like trying to follow a recipe with half the ingredients missing and no instructions to guide you. The treatment protocols are odd, to say the least, and everyone seems to be in the dark about what the end goal actually looks like. You've seen other patients get better, or at least that's what the doctors say. They've walked out with their heads held high, cured, and ready to re-enter society. But when you ask them how it happened, they just smile nervously and mumble something about following the instructions and staying calm. You can't help but wonder if anyone really gets it. Maybe the key to recovery isn't understanding the treatment at all, but just playing along, pretending that everything's going as planned. The treatments themselves are as confusing as the definition of recovery. One day, it's a round of hypnotic suggestions, with a doctor telling you to focus on breathing and imagining your happy place, which frankly sounds more like a poorly executed therapy session than something that would fix the fundamental issues you came in with. Another day, you're told that therapy involves taking a walk in the courtyard, because surely walking in a circle like a confused hamster will help you find peace. Sometimes, you're subjected to the cold water baths, other times, the dreaded electric shock treatments. They say it's for your own good, of course, but when you ask how it actually helps, you're met with vague assurances that it's all part of the process. The process you're learning is to do whatever the staff tells you and pretend it's working. The more you observe, the more you realize that recovery, as the asylum defines it, has little to do with actually improving your mental health. It's about making you compliant. If you follow the rules, if you accept everything as part of the healing, then you're seen as improving. There's no real measure of success here, just an ongoing expectation that you'll conform. It's like a factory for the mind, churning out patients who've learned to nod and smile but not to think too hard. One of the strangest parts of all this is the idea of graduating from the asylum. You've heard whispers among the staff and patients about those who've made it, who've been cured, but when you try to figure out what that actually means, it becomes even more elusive. The patients who are deemed recovered often look like they've simply learned how to suppress every part of themselves that made them human. They return to society, or whatever society still exists outside these walls, with empty eyes, as if the asylum's brand of healing has stripped them of anything that might have resembled individuality. You wonder if this is really what healing looks like, if it's just about survival rather than actually living. You try to picture what it would feel like to leave, to walk out of this place and breathe fresh air again, to feel the sun on your face, not filtered through the grime of this prison's windows. But somehow, that dream feels distant now, like it belongs to someone else, someone who hasn't spent months or years being told that you're getting better, with no real idea of what that even means. So you comply. You follow the rules, though you don't really understand them. You let the treatments happen, even though they don't seem to be making much of a difference. Maybe you're just waiting for the day when someone tells you that you've done enough, that you've proven yourself. Maybe that day will come, and maybe it won't. Maybe you'll be among the lucky few who walk out with their dignity still intact. Or maybe you'll stay here forever, trapped in this strange, silent waiting game where the only way out is pretending that you've recovered. In the end, you wonder if recovery is even possible in a place like this. Or is it just the asylum's way of saying, you'll leave when we say you're ready? Either way, you're not really sure you want to be cured at all. Maybe being recovered means losing the very things that made you human in the first place. So for now, you'll keep playing the game, following the rules, waiting for your turn to escape. Or maybe you'll just get comfortable in your own brand of madness. After all, in a place like this, who's to say what normal even is anymore? Family members occasionally pop in for visits. It's sweet in a way until you realize they're mostly here to make sure they can check off a box on their moral obligation list. They'll wave, chat for a few minutes, and leave with the kind of relief that suggests they're escaping their own personal version of the asylum, the one where they have to care about you. It's always the same routine. You're given a few minutes of respite from the monotony of the asylum's daily grind. The staff unlocks the door to your room, and you're escorted to the visiting area, a small, barren space that might have once been designed to offer comfort, but now feels more like a holding cell. The walls are bare, save for the faintest marks where pictures might have once hung, and the floor is so cold that you can feel it seep into your bones even through the thin hospital socks they've given you. There's no warmth here, just the sterile sense that you're being monitored, because you are. The moment the door opens and your family walks in, you can feel the tension in the air. They don't know how to act around you anymore. They're not sure if they should hug you, look you in the eye, or just pretend that this is all normal. They stand there awkwardly, shifting from foot to foot, not sure how to navigate this strange clinical version of you. Maybe you're the same person you were before the asylum, maybe not. Either way, this version of you, the one that's been tucked away behind walls of white coats and treatments, feels more like a stranger than someone they once knew. Your parents, let's call them your visitors for today, give you an awkward smile. It's the kind of smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. You can tell they're trying to be supportive, trying to comfort you, but there's a strange distance between you now. They don't understand what you're going through. They don't understand the bizarre world you've been thrust into, where every moment is dictated by routine, and you're left wondering if your mind is still your own. The conversation, as always, is stilted and surface level. They ask how you're doing, but you know they don't really want to know. They've been told what to say. You're looking better. You must be improving. Everything's going to be okay. They don't ask the real questions, the ones that matter, like whether you're actually getting better or just learning how to survive in this suffocating place. They don't ask what it's like to be treated like a patient, to be spoken to like a child, to be told that your feelings are just a symptom. They don't ask if you've felt anything since you arrived. Instead, they ask about the weather, about the last time you saw someone from the outside world. They ask if you're eating well, which if they had seen what you ate, would probably prompt them to run out of the room screaming. But no, instead, they smile politely, nodding in approval at whatever you say. You mention how you've been feeling a little down, and they just reassure you that it's all part of the healing process, as if the word healing holds any real meaning in this place. You watch as the minutes drag on, each one feeling heavier than the last. They glance at their watches, noticing the time, and you can almost see the internal countdown ticking away. Their visit is almost over, and they can finally leave. It's not that they don't care, it's just that they don't know how to care anymore. How could they? They're not the ones trapped in here, subjected to bizarre treatments and endless hours of isolation. They're not the ones who've been stripped of their identity and turned into a case study. And so, like clockwork, the conversation shifts again, and they start to talk about their own lives, what's going on outside the asylum. The small talk begins to feel more like a distraction than a comfort, And then, just like that, it's time for them to go. There's no big emotional farewell, no promises to come back soon. Just a few quick, insincere hugs and a mumbled, "We'll see you next time." And then they're gone, slipping back into the world outside, leaving you behind to stare at the cold, lifeless walls once more. It's a strange kind of relief, really, because as much as you want them to care, you know that the truth is they're just as trapped as you are, trapped in their own guilt, their own discomfort, their own inability to do anything meaningful to help. You're left alone again, in the same sterile room, with nothing but your thoughts and the haunting realization that your family isn't the only one who's been affected by your time here. You've all become strangers to each other, bound together by a shared sense of helplessness. They leave, but the absence lingers in the silence they leave behind. The loneliness feels heavier now, somehow, because it's a reminder that even when people do visit, they don't know how to reach you. They don't know how to see you anymore, not as you are now, but as the person you used to be. And so, you sit there in the quiet, waiting for the next round of treatments, the next day of silence, the next visit that will end just like the last. Tea is served every afternoon, and you'd think it would be comforting, wouldn't you? Not in this place. The tea is as watery as the porridge, and the idea of having a nice chat with a fellow patient sounds good until you realize the person sitting across from you has been mumbling to themselves for hours. You sit down at the long wooden table in the mess hall, hoping for something, anything, that might make the day feel less like a never-ending blur of gray walls and lifeless routines. The asylum's idea of comfort seems to be this ritual, this moment where you're supposed to forget the world around you and pretend that everything is normal, that everything is fine. It's tea time, after all. Surely that means something. But when the teapot is placed in front of you, you stare at the pale liquid inside and wonder if it's even worth drinking. It's not hot enough to warm your bones, not strong enough to give you the jolt of comfort you're craving. Instead, it sits there in your cup like a sad afterthought, a weak reminder of everything you've been missing. The tea isn't even proper tea. It's more like flavored water, vaguely brown with a hint of something that might be herbal, but you can't be sure. It tastes like wet cardboard, and the faint bitterness doesn't do anything to mask the overwhelming sense of despair that's settled over the room. You take a sip, not because you want to, but because it's part of the routine, and in this place, you follow the routine to avoid being noticed. But as you swallow, you can't help but wonder, is this what they think comfort is? A cup of tea that leaves you thirsty for anything else, both physically and emotionally? You glance around the room, watching the other patients slowly sip their own cups of tea, some of them stirring their cups aimlessly, others holding the mug in their hands as if the warmth might bring some semblance of hope. The silence in the room is palpable, except for the occasional rattle of a spoon against the porcelain or the soft murmur of someone talking to themselves. It's always the same. No one really interacts here. There's no real conversation, just the quiet shuffle of patients, pretending that they're fine, pretending that they're enjoying their tea. You wonder if anyone has ever really looked forward to tea time. Does anyone actually enjoy it? Or do they just drink it because it's expected of them? The person sitting across from you is one of the regulars in the asylum, a quiet, disheveled woman who's been here longer than you can remember. She's staring at her cup, mumbling to herself in a soft, barely audible voice. You can't make out the words, but you know they don't make any sense. She's been like this for days, maybe longer. Every time you see her, she's sitting there, lost in her own thoughts, her hands shaking slightly as she holds the cup. It's not uncommon, really. In a place like this, everyone has their own way of coping with the madness, their own way of shutting out the world. But something about her mumbling feels different today. It's louder now, more insistent, and you wonder if she's trying to make sense of something in her mind that's slipping further and further away. You try not to listen to her, but it's hard not to. Her voice rises and falls in strange rhythms, like a broken record. You glance at the staff, standing at the far end of the room, observing the patients as though they're not even human, just numbers, just cases to be handled. They don't care about the tea or the people drinking it. They're too busy filling out forms, making notes, and pushing the patients through the motions of the day. Every now and then, one of them will wander over, check the temperature of the tea, and offer a polite smile. But it's all just part of the show. The show is this asylum. The tea time ritual never changes. The cups are refilled, the minutes drag on, and the staff wander around with their clipboards. But the room doesn't feel any warmer, any more comforting. It's still cold, still clinical. You find yourself staring at your tea, wondering how long it will take before you start to forget what real tea tastes like. The kind that comes with a smile, with a chat, with a sense of normalcy. You can feel the weight of time here, ticking away slowly, quietly, under the surface of everything. The tea, weak and tasteless, becomes a metaphor for everything else in the asylum. You're stuck in a place where nothing is really real, where even the simplest pleasures are stripped of meaning. You wonder if this is the true purpose of tea time, to keep you occupied just long enough for the reality of your situation to settle in, to remind you that you're not free, not truly alive. You're just here, waiting for the next part of the routine to begin. And so, tea time comes to an end, as it always does. You place your cup down, feeling the coldness of the ceramic against your fingertips, and look around the room. Everyone is leaving, shuffling back to their rooms or their designated corners of the asylum. The silence returns, broken only by the sound of distant footsteps, the soft rustle of the staff's uniforms. You get up, walk back to your cell, and wonder if the next time tea is served, it will feel any different. But deep down, you know it won't. In this place, nothing changes. At some point, you stop feeling like a person and start feeling like a label. You are now officially a patient. Everything about you, from your clothes to your name, is stripped away. You no longer have a say in your life. You are simply a case study. And if you ever want to get out, well, good luck trying to remember what it was like to be free. It happens gradually, like a slow erosion of self. One moment, you're walking down the street, minding your own business, feeling like an individual with your own thoughts, desires, and rights. But in the asylum, all of that is slowly pulled away, layer by layer. First, it's your clothes. You might have entered this place wearing something that felt like you, something that was yours. But now, you're draped in a standard issue gown, rough, scratchy, and entirely impersonal. It's not the kind of clothing you'd wear to an event, or even to a family gathering. No, it's a uniform of submission, a costume that says, you no longer matter as an individual. The first time you put it on, you feel a sense of violation, but it's not like you have a choice. You quickly realize this isn't just about comfort. It's a uniform that signifies your transition from a person to a patient, From someone who has a story to someone whose narrative is being written by the institution. It's a cruel kind of irony. The clothes, which once might have made you feel at ease, now become the symbol of your captivity. You find yourself wondering how much of yourself will be left once you've been stripped of everything personal. What's left when the things that make you who you are, your sense of identity, your personal style, your sense of individuality, are taken away piece by piece? Next, they take your name. Well, not literally, but it feels like it. Your official title is no longer tied to who you were. It's reduced to a number, a case study in a thick file. You become just another subject in a long line of patients, all receiving the same treatments, all enduring the same oppressive silence. You're the patient, and that's it. There's nothing personal about that. No one uses your name anymore. You're just another statistic, a part of the larger system, and everyone treats you like you no longer have a voice. Even your face begins to feel foreign. The more you spend time here, the more you see the reflection of a person who looks nothing like the person you were when you first arrived. You stare at yourself in the cracked, dirty mirror in your room, and you almost don't recognize the person looking back at you. The eyes are tired, the face is gaunt, and there's something hollow in your expression, like life is slowly draining out of you. And as the days pass, you find it harder to remember what it felt like to smile, to laugh, to be something other than the patient. And the worst part? You don't even realize when it happens, when the label becomes your new identity. One day, you just wake up and find that it doesn't matter who you are anymore. The you who existed outside these walls is a distant memory, a fading picture in your mind. Your voice is quieted by the dull routine, your thoughts muted by the daily grind. The staff no longer look you in the eye as an individual. They look at you as a case, as a problem to be solved, a project to be managed. You're not a person anymore. You're a problem with a diagnosis. You wonder, as you go through the motions, if anyone even notices you anymore. Not really. The doctors don't care about you as a person. They care about your symptoms, your behaviors, your improvement rate. The staff don't talk to you as a human being. They talk to you like they're reading a list of symptoms, like you're some sort of subject in an experiment. And worst of all, the patients, those who are still able to form coherent thoughts, don't talk to you as a fellow person. They talk to you as another member of the sick collective. You are the patient now, nothing more. You start to lose the ability to distinguish between who you were and who you've become. How can you? The system has absorbed you, consumed you, until there's nothing left but the label, nothing left but the idea of recovery. You start to wonder what it would even feel like to leave, to walk out of the asylum as a person again. What would it be like to exist in the world, not as someone's case file, but as an individual with their own desires, their own story to tell? Will you even recognize yourself if you ever make it out? The truth is, they have rewritten you. You are not the person you used to be. You are not the person you hope to be. You are just the patient, waiting for a miracle or an escape that may never come. The asylum doesn't want you to leave. It doesn't want you to remember what it was like to feel whole. It just wants you to conform, to become another part of this machinery. And when you do leave, if you ever leave, you'll leave with that label attached to you forever. You'll never be able to shake it off. And so, you go on another day, another dull routine, another step further from who you used to be. The label is all you have now. And the question is, when you do finally leave, Will you even be able to remember what it was like to be more than just the patient? There are things that go on here that the staff hope you'll never know. You might hear muffled sounds at night, screams, cries, maybe even a struggle, but no one will talk about them. The asylum isn't just a place for healing, it's a place where people are lost, and what you hear in the darkness stays in the darkness. At night, the asylum transforms. What was once a monotonous, sterile environment used during the day becomes something altogether more sinister. The walls, which during daylight hours seem like simple barriers, now feel like they're pressing in on you, whispering secrets you don't want to hear. The flickering gas lamps cast long shadows down the hallways, and the silence between the occasional rustling of paper or shifting footsteps is filled with something far more unsettling. The sounds, the ones you've learned to ignore during the day, come alive at night. There's the sound of distant crying, faint but persistent, like the soft weeping of someone who knows they'll never be heard. Sometimes it's louder, more desperate, a shout that gets abruptly cut off. You lie in your bed, eyes wide open, trying not to listen, but the sounds seep through the thin walls and invade your mind. You wonder, at first, if it's just your imagination, if the fear of being trapped in this place is making you hear things. But after a while, you can no longer deny that there are things happening here that no one talks about, things that are deliberately kept quiet. The staff don't acknowledge the noises, don't comment on the shadows that linger in the corners of the rooms, just beyond the reach of the light. They move briskly down the hallways, their faces set in the same neutral expression, eyes never meeting yours, as if they too are trying to avoid acknowledging the ghosts of this place. It's not just the sounds that unsettle you, it's the feeling that someone, something, is always watching you. There are patients, of course, who have been here longer than you, and they've started to lose the ability to communicate, to form coherent thoughts. They sit in their rooms, rocking back and forth, whispering to themselves in a language that seems foreign, even to them. But then, there are the other patients, the ones who you never see during the day. You hear them in the middle of the night, when the halls are empty, their voices distorted by the shadows. Sometimes they scream, sometimes they laugh, and sometimes you're not sure if they're even human anymore. Their bodies are still there, but their minds? They've vanished into the ether, lost to the asylum's endless cycle of neglect and cruel treatments. One night, you hear something that's different. It's not the usual muffled cries, but something much more violent. The sounds of a struggle, a crash, followed by the distinct sound of something or someone hitting the floor with a sickening thud. The door to the room across the hall opens, then slams shut, and then silence, heavy and absolute. You sit up, heart pounding, straining to hear anything that might offer an explanation, but there's nothing. The halls are empty, the shadows deep. No one comes to investigate. No one seems to notice. It's as if it never happened. You lie back down, but sleep won't come. The next morning, you overhear a nurse talking to one of the other staff members in hushed tones. They don't realize you're listening, but you catch a snippet of their conversation. Another one, the nurse says, barely able to conceal the weariness in her voice. I'll take care of it, but he'll need to be moved. There's no emotion in her voice, no surprise, just the same dull tone she uses to discuss the weather. The words hit you like a brick. Another one, you know what that means? It's not the first time it's happened. Someone losing control, someone being dragged away in the middle of the night. Another broken soul, lost to the asylum's walls, slipping through the cracks without anyone noticing, or worse, without anyone caring. As the days go on, the sense of dread grows. You start to wonder about the patients who have disappeared. Where do they go when they're taken away in the middle of the night? What happens to them behind those closed doors? You've never seen them again, never heard their voices in the halls. Some of them were here one day, sitting across from you at the table, sharing an eager meal, and the next, they're just gone. No explanations, no goodbyes. Just a sense of vacancy left behind, like a piece of furniture that's been removed, and no one remembers who put it there in the first place. And yet, the staff remain unfazed. They don't comment on the disappearances, the screams, or the shadows that seem to follow you from room to room. It's just part of the system, part of the daily grind. As long as the institution runs smoothly, as long as the paperwork is filled out and the treatments continue, no one questions what happens to those who slip through the cracks. The ones who vanish into the night, never to be seen again. And you, trapped in this world of silence and shadows, wonder how long before you too become another whisper in the dark? How long before the asylum decides that you too have become too much of a burden to be kept? The sounds of the night begin to take on a new meaning, and the silence between them becomes more deafening than ever. The asylum isn't just a place of healing, it's a place of erasure, and the only certainty you have now is that nothing stays here for long, not even you. The thing about Victorian doctors is that they were usually pretty convinced that they knew exactly what was wrong with you, whether or not it had anything to do with the truth. They could diagnose anything, from hysteria to female weakness. Of course, it didn't help if you were just a little too curious or unwilling to comply. It starts innocently enough. You're sitting in that cold, sterile room, waiting for the doctor to make their grand entrance, probably thinking that this time, just maybe, you'll get a real answer. But no, just like every other visit, you're greeted by a figure in a long coat who seems more interested in their notes than in you as a person. As soon as they sit down, their eyes flicker over the page, and you can feel it. The diagnosis is already decided in their mind. "How are you feeling today?" they ask, their tone clinical, as though your symptoms are simply another bullet point on a checklist. You try to explain, really you do, but the words feel like they're falling on deaf ears. The doctor's not really listening, they're just waiting for their turn to speak. Before you know it, they're making their assumptions, connecting the dots based on half facts and outdated theories. They scribble down something on their notepad, give you a pat on the back, and tell you it's all just nerves or overexertion. If you're female, the diagnosis is even easier. Female weakness is a catch-all term used to explain every symptom from dizziness to emotional instability. Are you too sad, too emotional, too easily overwhelmed? It's female weakness. Can't sleep at night? Hysteria. It doesn't matter that you've been feeling physically ill or that your emotions are tied to something much deeper than simply being sensitive. The doctors of this time were experts in dismissing your humanity and replacing it with a one-size-fits-all explanation. You're not an individual with a complex mind and body. You're just a case to be treated, and they have the cure, whether you need it or not. The thing is, when a doctor is convinced they know what's wrong with you, it doesn't matter what you say. If you try to explain that your symptoms aren't just nerves or that your headaches aren't from thinking too much, they'll just wave it off. After all, they have their theories, and they're too busy to actually listen to you. You've become part of the system, part of a machine that churns out diagnoses based on preconceived notions, not careful observation. If you happen to be a little too vocal about your frustration, well, that's just more evidence for their diagnosis. You're disruptive, you're unruly, and that's exactly what they expect from someone with hysteria. It's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you push back against the treatment or question their methods, the doctors are quick to label you as difficult, as though your refusal to accept their answers is proof of your mental instability. But let's talk about the treatments for a second, because, as you've learned by now, the treatments in the Victorian Asylum are as misguided as the diagnoses. When you're told to take rest cures or engage in the dreaded rest therapy, you realize just how little these doctors actually understand the human mind. Resting, they say, will heal your weaknesses, but how does lying still in a sterile, lifeless room help your mind, your emotions, your life? These aren't treatments, they're exercises in control. The doctors don't want you to heal, they want you to comply. And so you lie there, day after day, trying to fight the suffocating monotony, knowing that the doctors are just waiting for you to recover, whatever that means. Meanwhile, for the men in the asylum, the diagnoses are often just as absurd, but veiled with a thin layer of authority. If a man is too emotional, it's simply melancholy or exhaustion. If he's too curious or asks too many questions, well, it's eccentricity or overwork. The doctors seem far more sympathetic to men, even when they're struggling with the same issues women face. They're not dismissed with a diagnosis of hysteria. They're given some rest, a light change of scenery, and told to get back to work. Women, on the other hand, are told their emotions are invalid and their struggles a sign of weakness. Their suffering is written off as if being female is a condition in itself, something that needs to be cured or managed, not understood. You realize eventually that this isn't about healing, it's about power. The doctors hold the keys to your life, and they're the ones who decide whether you'll be allowed to leave or whether you'll remain just another case in their ever-expanding file. You're not a person to them. You're an object to be analyzed, diagnosed, and treated, whether or not the treatment has any basis in reality. Your emotions, your pain, your confusion are all swept aside in favor of convenient, overly simplistic labels that make it easier to explain your existence in a way that suits them. And so, you wonder, how much longer will you be trapped here, under the control of a system that gets it so wrong and yet is so certain it's right? How long will you be a patient and not a person? The question lingers, unanswered, as the days slip by, filled with misguided treatments, misdiagnoses, and the haunting knowledge that the doctors who are supposed to heal you don't actually care about you at all. They only care about making you fit into their narrow, archaic view of the world. You start to wonder if there was something about this life that was catching. The more you walk around, the more you start to see the patients acting out in strange ways. You know you're in the company of the insane, but the question arises, are they truly mad? Or are they just reacting to their own bizarre reality? At first, you thought you could tell the difference. There were the ones who spoke in complete nonsense, lost in their own delusions, muttering to themselves about things you couldn't even begin to understand. They seemed like the obvious ones, the easy targets for the label of insane. You watched them with a mixture of curiosity and dread, wondering how they could live in a world where their thoughts had no anchor, no grounding in the reality you still believed in. But as the days pass, you start to see things differently. The lines between the sane and insane aren't as clear as you thought. It starts small, just a subtle shift in behavior here and there. One patient, who you've noticed quietly pacing the halls, suddenly stops and starts talking to himself. He's speaking in a calm voice, but the words don't make sense. He's talking about things you know are impossible, like meeting the queen or finding a hidden treasure. The strange thing is, he seems so certain of it, like the rest of the world doesn't even exist in his mind. You stop and watch him for a moment, wondering, is he truly mad, or is he simply reacting to a world that has rejected him, a world that no longer makes sense? Then, there's the woman down the hall. She used to talk to you in passing, asking questions like, "Do you know the way home?" or "How did I get here?" It was always the same vague questions, no clear answers, and you'd respond with whatever politeness you could muster, trying to keep up the illusion of normalcy. But one day, you hear her laughing, a wild, unhinged laugh that echoes down the corridor. Watch her as she walks around in circles, her arms stretched out like she's trying to fly. She doesn't seem afraid, doesn't seem lost. She seems free in a way. There's a strange clarity in her madness, a self-assurance that almost feels comforting. The asylum, with its rules and treatments, has stripped her of everything else, but her mind has taken flight. It's as if she's left the world behind entirely. At first, you chalk it up to the insanity of the place, the stress, the monotony, the endless feeling of being watched and controlled. But the more you witness these odd behaviors, the more you begin to question what it means to be truly sane. Who defines what's normal here? Who decides whether someone is acting out because they've lost touch with reality or because they're simply reacting to a world that doesn't make sense anymore? You begin to notice the others too, the ones who are quieter, more subtle in their reactions. A man in the corner, staring off into the distance, his fingers twitching as if he's playing an invisible piano. He doesn't make any noise, doesn't speak, just watches the world around him as if everything is a performance meant for him alone. Sometimes, you catch a glimpse of him in the corner of your eye, and you wonder if he's aware of his own strangeness, or if it's simply his way of coping with the inescapable strangeness of the asylum. And then there's you. You start to feel it too, the creeping sense that you're not quite who you used to be. The longer you stay in this place, the more it feels like your mind is being slowly twisted, like your thoughts are being stretched out and bent in ways they shouldn't be. You've stopped counting the days because, frankly, it doesn't matter anymore. Time has no meaning in the asylum. You're just another face in the crowd, another patient in the system. Your thoughts don't feel like your own anymore. You start to question your memories. Did that conversation you had with your family really happen? Or was it just something your mind created to make you feel less alone? It's subtle at first, this shift, but eventually it becomes impossible to ignore. You realize that the longer you stay here, the more you're becoming like them, the patients who walk the halls, their minds fractured by their experiences, their behaviors unpredictable, their sanity slipping through the cracks. And you wonder, is it the asylum that's driving you mad, or is it that the asylum is simply revealing the madness that was already inside all along? In the end, you start to understand that madness isn't just about losing touch with reality. It's about losing your connection to the world around you, about being stuck in a place where you no longer fit in, where the rules are arbitrary and the treatments make no sense. It's about reacting to a world that no longer works, a world that is fractured beyond recognition. And in that sense, maybe the insane aren't the ones who have truly lost their minds. They're just the ones who have stopped pretending everything is fine. They've embraced the absurdity of this place, while you're still here, wondering if you'll ever be able to walk away from it. You start to question, more than anything, who's really mad here? The ones who've embraced the chaos, or the ones who've been stuck pretending they haven't lost their way? There's a strange phenomenon that happens at night in the asylum. The staff, they vanish. You wake up to an eerie silence, and as you walk around the dark halls, you realize that for some strange reason, the caretakers have disappeared. Is it a sinister plot, a medical secret, or simply a case of everyone needing to take a break from the madness? At first, you think it's just a fluke. Maybe you woke up early. Maybe the night shift isn't as reliable as you'd like to believe. But then, as the hours pass, you start to realize that it's not just one night, it's every night. You lie there in your small, uncomfortable bed, trying to sleep, but you can't shake the feeling that something is missing. It's not the absence of noise, it's the absence of them. The staff, those faceless figures who pass by in the halls, clipboards in hand, giving orders with impassive efficiency, are nowhere to be seen. And suddenly, the quiet seems louder, the shadows seem darker, and the walls feel like they're pressing in on you, closing you off from the world. You venture out of your room, your footsteps echoing down the long, narrow hallways. The usual sounds that accompany the asylum during the day, the shuffle of feet, the soft murmur of conversation, are gone. Now it's just you, the flickering candlelight casting eerie shadows on the cracked walls, and the oppressive silence that seems to seep into the very air around you. You can't hear anyone else, can't see anyone moving, yet you know there are patients like you, still wandering, still trapped within these walls. But where are the staff? Where are the people who are supposed to be watching over you? As you pass by the nurse's station, you notice something odd. The door is slightly ajar, but there is no one inside. The desk is empty, save for a few stray papers and a half-drunk mug of tea that's gone cold. The lights are dim, casting long shadows across the room, but there's no sign of life. No staff member sitting at the desk, no one moving around, no one checking on the patients. It's as if they've all just vanished. You check the schedule posted on the wall, but it's out of date. A reminder that time here doesn't flow the same way it does in the outside world. Your curiosity grows. You start to walk further down the hallway, trying to find someone, anyone, who might explain where the staff have gone. You pass several doors to patient rooms, all closed, all locked tight, but no one is awake. It's strange, almost too strange. You can't remember a time when the halls were ever this quiet, this empty. The feeling of isolation grows, and you can't help but wonder, is this part of some grand plan? A shift in the system? Or is there something more sinister at play here? Something you're not supposed to see? The more you wander, the more you realize you've reached the farthest corners of the asylum. The rooms here are different, larger, colder, and much more isolated. As you walk past the storage rooms, you see an unfamiliar door at the end of a darkened hallway, a door you've never noticed before. It's locked, of course, but there's something about it that draws you in. It doesn't seem to belong to any part of the asylum that you're familiar with. You feel an uneasy curiosity gnawing at you, wondering if this door holds the answers to the strange disappearance of the staff. Then, from the far end of the hall, you hear something. A faint creaking of footsteps, soft but deliberate. You stop dead in your tracks, holding your breath, as if the very sound of movement will give away your position. The footsteps stop, and for a moment, there's nothing but the creaking of the building settling. The silence is thick, but it's not empty. You know someone is there, somewhere just out of sight, watching, waiting. Is it one of the staff, or is it someone else? Someone who's been here longer than you, someone who knows this place better than anyone? You wait. You listen, but nothing happens. The footsteps start again, but they're fading, moving further away. You take a deep breath and continue down the hall, your pulse quickening with each step. You pass by more empty rooms, more darkened hallways, more doors that lead to places you're not sure you want to explore. The farther you go, the more you feel like you're walking through a maze that's been deliberately designed to confuse you. Eventually, you find yourself back where you started, in the same quiet hallway where you began your search. The staff still haven't returned. The silence is as thick as ever, and the eerie absence hangs in the air like a dense fog. You're left wondering if you imagined the whole thing, if the staff have simply taken a break, or if there's something darker lurking beneath the surface of the asylum. What's clear is that the mystery of the night, the disappearance of the staff, has deepened, and now you can't shake the feeling that you've only scratched the surface of something far more unsettling. As you make your way back to your room, you glance over your shoulder, half expecting to see someone following you, someone who's been watching you this whole time. But there's no one there, just the flickering light and the sound of your own breathing. You close the door behind you, lock it, and sit on your bed. You still don't know what's going on, but you know one thing for sure. When the staff are gone, when the halls are silent, there's no escaping the feeling that you're not alone, and not in the way you'd expect. The asylum's secrets are deeper than you realized, and with each passing night, you wonder what they'll reveal next. You've had enough. You've been here long enough to know the system, and now it's time to get out. You make a plan. You start small, but each step makes you feel a little more like you've got a shot at freedom. If you can just make it past the guards, dodge the night watchman, and avoid the straitjackets, there might be a way out. But first, you'll need to survive one more day. The first thing you do is observe. The asylum is a maze of routine, a place where the staff are so caught up in their duties that they've stopped noticing the little details. You begin to map out your surroundings, noting the guards' shifts, the spots where the cameras are hidden, and the places where the staff congregate when they think no one is watching. You start small, just a glance here, a quick step there, but soon you realize you're learning the rhythm of the place. The guards march the same route at the same time each day, their footsteps the metronome of your prison. The night watchman, the one who prowls the halls after dark, has a set pattern too. You begin to recognize the moments when he's distracted, when you might be able to slip by unnoticed. The next step, timing. Everything here operates on a tight schedule. Meals, treatments, the brief moments when you're allowed to wander in the courtyard. It's predictable, and that predictability is your ally. You start to adjust your own schedule, moving when the guards are distracted, talking to fellow patients at just the right moment to avoid suspicion. You've learned to be invisible, to slip between the cracks and blend in with the flow of things. It's a small victory, but it feels like progress. Then, you start planning your escape route. You've noticed that the building isn't as impenetrable as it seems. There's a service door in the back of the building, rarely used, that leads to a small alleyway outside. It's unlocked at night, but the trick is getting there without being seen. The hallway leading to it is guarded during the day, but it's empty at night. You can almost taste it, the cold air of freedom waiting just outside that door. But getting there is another story entirely. Your first few attempts to test the waters are quiet and cautious. You take little steps, a quick peek around the corner, a quiet movement toward the hallway. It's like a game of cat and mouse, where the stakes are your freedom. Each time you move, just your heart races, not just from fear, but from the thrill of defying the system, the asylum, everything that's been holding you in place. But the closer you get, the more you realize how risky it is. One wrong move, one misplaced step, and you'll be back where you started, locked in a cell, under even stricter supervision. But each time you succeed in slipping by the guards, each time you avoid the night watchman's gaze or dodge the eyes of the nurses, you gain more confidence. You start to feel like maybe, just maybe, you can outsmart the asylum. You've become adept at blending in, at becoming part of the background. The more you observe, the more you realize that they have been relying on your complacency, on the assumption that you'll simply accept your fate. But that's the thing about the asylum. It relies on fear, on the idea that escape is impossible. The more you watch, the more you realize that they're wrong. You just need to stay one step ahead. The hardest part is the night. The night watchman, always lurking in the shadows, is the biggest obstacle. You've seen him walk the halls, his boots scraping against the floor, his presence so pervasive it makes you freeze in place. You've seen how he seems to know where everyone is, always just around the corner when you least expect it. But you've noticed his routines too. He has his own distractions, his own moments of complacency, and it's in those moments that you strike. It's a game of patience, waiting for the right moment to move, to slip by, unnoticed. You've seen him pass by, engrossed in his own thoughts, and that's when you make your move. You tell yourself, one more day, and each day brings you closer to your goal. You've come to realize that escaping the asylum is not just about getting through the walls. It's about staying sane, about not letting the system break you before you can break free. You've been told that this is where you belong, that you need to be treated, fixed. But you've learned something in this place. You're not broken, you're just trapped. And so, you prepare for that final moment, the one where you'll slip through the cracks, where you'll take a breath of fresh air and feel the weight of freedom for the first time in ages. The plan is coming together, sets it step by step, and while you don't know if you'll succeed, there's one thing you've learned in this place. Nothing lasts forever. Not the walls, not the rules, and certainly not the fear. You know the escape won't be easy. It might not even be possible, but it doesn't matter anymore. Because even in the face of the asylum's control, you've rediscovered something far more important, the will to fight. So here you are, at the end of another day in the asylum. The lights flicker, the shadows stretch long, and the silence wraps around you like a blanket you didn't ask for. You've survived another round of treatments, dealt with the bizarre routines, and faced the ever-present question of what it really means to be sane. The escape plan is still brewing in your mind, your days a mix of careful observation and quiet rebellion. You might not be free yet, but one thing is certain, you're still fighting. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most important thing. Because this place, this suffocating asylum, isn't just a test of your body, it's a test of your spirit. They may strip away your identity, they may try to break you down, but they can't take away the one thing that's always yours, your will to survive. You're not just a patient here, you're a person, and as long as you can hold on to that, there's hope. So as you close your eyes tonight, ready to face whatever tomorrow brings, remember this. You're still here. You've managed to keep a piece of yourself intact, despite everything that's been done to you. Maybe the path to freedom is a long one, maybe it's even impossible. But the fact that you're still thinking, still planning, still dreaming of something beyond these walls, that's your victory. Because history might be filled with horror and suffering, but it's also filled with people who refused to be defined by their circumstances, who fought for something better, even when it seemed hopeless. And as you lie in bed, waiting for sleep to finally come, you might whisper a quiet thank you to those who came before you, the ones who survived against all odds, the ones who never gave up on the idea of freedom. They didn't let their world define them, and neither will you. So, rest easy, because tomorrow is another chance to fight, another chance to survive, and maybe, just maybe, another step closer to freedom, okay? Good night.